Hello, Allison. You know what I'm glad about? This is the first one, like I just rolled the dice and I didn't confirm if we were recording today. And
I feel
sure
like you
enough,
did that last time. I feel like you did
mm,
last time. I think we're 2 for 2 on the
okay,
not confirmed.
okay,
Schedule it, put it on the calendar,
yep,
and just trust the process.
and trust the process.
And trust me.
It's very hard as a mom of three, running your own business as a partner, and then me in the more rigid corporate America to be like, I'm putting us on the calendar. That means people show up and you don't need to triple confirm, but
Always a roll of the dice with me.
it's a roll of the dice. I
Yeah.
usually like to do it maybe the morning of the night before. I haven't been. I've been trusting the process, and lo and behold, the good doctor has showed up on time to grace us with her knowledge
Yes.
on bodily functions, human performance, healthcare, and occasionally tolerate me bringing in guests from outside industries to just rant on other things. So welcome in. Good to see you. It is Super Bowl weekend.
Hmm.
This will
Yep.
be out. My 49ers, mine, are in
Yeah.
the championship to
Yeah.
avenge their loss from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
George Kittle will reign supreme as the best tight end in football and beat the federal agent that is Travis Kelce.
Oh boy.
And we'll just take it from there. But hopefully, when we release this, which will be a week late, people will
But
have ammunition if they lost to come and pile on me. And if not,
yeah.
this will be Nostradamus in nature of
Yeah.
predicting the win.
Sounds good. Your
Um,
nephews are with you. They want the Niners.
this is good news. That's
Yeah,
good
they want the
juju.
Niners.
Okay.
I think Julia wants the 49ers.
Yeah.
But she thinks
Um,
you're a crazy animal. So
yeah,
get the
in
dog.
other news, which I did share on my Instagram stories, she at school ratted me out and called me a crazy animal in the jungle in one of her sentences when she was using her new
Amazing.
vocabulary.
Amazing. She had to use
And
uncle and jungle, I think, and she put that together very simply, very, very quick.
and while accurate,
Yeah,
somehow I take offense to it
yeah. I
because
mean,
there's more keep that in the family.
I
But
heard I heard the saying a couple weeks ago, and it was just kind of like, oh shit, is that your kids eventually actually figure out who you are.
oh, I mean,
Like
yeah.
like they eventually like, anything whatever it is you are, they get you. They figure it out quickly.
Yeah. Our family's close enough where aunts, uncles, and cousins are right in that mix too. So
Yeah.
I made no qualms of letting the cat out
No.
of the bag of who I was, but they made no qualms about reading the room very fast. So
Correct. All right.
all right. So welcome in everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tolerating a little bit of family banter. Go Niners. The doctor today wants to talk about ACL rehab, repair, surgery, non-surgery. We already did that one where you were becoming a hot star in the nation, leading the charge in the US domestically on the cross brace protocol,
Hmm.
origin out of Australia.
Correct.
That episode on our podcast is doing very well.
Yeah.
People are looking for that.
People are looking for it. People see it and people know it's there. It's interesting. I just talked to a guy in Minneapolis 2 nights ago who was looking for that as an option.
Yeah.
And when he reaches out to the Australian team, they're saying this is the girl to call in the US, which is flattering, but at the same time, like really, like nobody else like has
Yeah.
had any other contact, like just like out of curiosity and like
Yeah.
thinking about it, pondering about it. I'm not saying you have to implement it,
Yeah.
or go full charge. And quite frankly, I still haven't had somebody who's gone through that. I've had 4 or 5 local people interested that ended up not being candidates, but it's just that it's new research, and this is the story of
Yeah.
new research, is that it takes forever for it to come to
Yep.
fruition. So anyway,
One of the I think one of the first ladies that you had inquire about it was like from Georgia,
yep,
South.
yep,
Gee, that's crazy, huh? So,
it's crazy.
yeah. And then do you worry about this becoming like your shtick Like, do you worry about bias about like you're trying to force everyone into that protocol, or do you have the wherewithal to still know that the old procedure is still viable, surgery is still on the table? You know, are you
I think it comes down to patient choice.
yeah,
Like, if you don't want surgery,
yeah,
then you don't have to have surgery.
yeah,
Unless you break your leg in a million pieces and you can't put it back together, and you don't even have the wherewithal to have a conversation yet about that because you're horizontal. You
yeah,
like, you don't, the more horizontal you are, the more of a patient you are. The more vertical you are, the more of a consumer you are.
right,
Right.
right.
Like, so if
I
you,
love that.
same, it was from a book by Tom Myers, who's
Yeah,
actually the,
you've
yeah,
quoted that
mentioned that
before.
before.
Yep.
So yeah, so it's, about customer service, and, in reality, at the end of the day, most orthopedic surgeries are elective.
Yeah.
And to
Yep.
say that you have to have a procedure for something just isn't right. And, there's a lot of research. I guess this wasn't on my list of what pisses me off in ACL stuff, but, a lot of research is, a lot of people, PTs, physicians, people, in the business that work with ACLs will tell you that if you don't get surgery, your risk of developing osteoarthritis in your knee is greater than if you got surgery.
Yeah.
And the truth from the research is that it's the fact that you tore your ACL that puts you at greater risk of developing osteoarthritis early. It's
It's
not surgical or non-surgical.
right.
It's
It's
the
the
fact
injury.
that you tore 100%. So
Right.
that risk is already up. And
Right.
then to say that you have to have surgery, which is how it is marketed right now,
Yep. Yeah. Good
is
point. I
insane.
like
And then
it.
I'll have the same physicians tell people that quad strength doesn't matter in ACL rehab. And then I want to fucking jump off the deep end. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We have been great about not swearing, but I don't feel like this one is going to be that, because this is a lot
Yes.
of built up anger
Yeah.
in my world. This
I
is my
love
element,
it.
so you're
I
stuck with me.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so yeah, the new cross brace protocol, we did an episode on that. Everyone should check it out on hey, you don't need to have surgery if you to tear your ACL. Granted, you must meet specific criteria, but that option is now on the table. It's a whole new world where I think the as long as us consumers are down with it, the good doctors, the good practitioners, the ones pushing the forefront will educate you fully and then put the choice in your hands and be like, maybe I would do this. They could slightly soft recommend, hey,
Yep.
try this, but
Yep.
it's ultimately up to you. And I hope that us as consumers um, veer towards that model of accepting the responsibility for our own choices as well.
Yep. And I think it's
Understand.
educated. I'm going to change one word on what you said, like, educated fully and as unbiasedly as possible,
Right.
because we
Should,
all will show our bias, right? And
yeah.
in the way I talk about cross bracing, it might sound externally like I have a bias, but I really don't.
Right.
Like, I think it's cool. I
Yeah.
would love to be a pioneer in the United States of doing it with people
Just
and be
fixing my
kind of
hat.
a go-to to it. What are you
Yep.
doing? And so there, have a, be the pioneer behind it. Like, obviously I'm not the pioneer, but taking that research and implementing it, and being kind of a go-to for that situation,
Yeah.
is how I feel I'm moving, and I like that. But at the same time, it's not for everybody. If you tell me that you want to try it, I am here for you.
Yeah.
I will talk to you. If you're across the country, I will talk to the PTs. I will share all the knowledge I have behind it.
That's
I'll
right.
do whatever I can to help you. But at the end of the day, it is your choice. And I just don't agree at all, even pre-cross bracing, with the notion that you have to do something, unless there are scenarios. I'm not saying it's never, but
Right.
where you have to, like, because actually the research behind non-operative care is okay too. Like, it's not great. It's the same pretty much as having surgery. Like, there's people that do well, and there's actually a push right now that, it's, again, research comes out all the time. So we're trying to take clinical experience
Yeah.
along with research,
Yeah.
along with patient values to make a decision.
Yeah.
But there is a discussion in the rehab world of waiting 3 months before you get surgery anyway. because, and there's pros and cons on both sides right now.
Right.
Like just get it done and move on and get things going versus get your range of motion back, get your strength back, feel as great as you possibly can, and then go in.
Yeah.
There's information on both sides. But
Sure.
again, if somebody chooses to wait, you know, a lot of times they're being put down by the orthopedics,
Yeah.
which that sucks, you know, like
Yeah.
that is what I fight
Yeah.
versus
Yeah. Yeah.
like give me the real like if my artery is sliced in half and I need to, you know, handle that, like I get
Yep.
it.
Yep.
But if it's an orthopedic surgery that the results are 50-50, maybe 60-40 in outcomes, like people
Yeah.
60 have good outcomes, then
Yeah.
okay. But present the research
That's
as it
it.
is, not a, and then state your bias, you know.
And
My
state.
opinion
Yep.
is I would do non-operative care for 3 weeks and or for sorry for 3 months and see how I felt. That's me. I'm a PT. I get
Yeah.
it. I understand that.
Yeah.
And that's what I'll say directly to people, you know, if it's your choice, like I'm
Yeah.
here, I'll support you.
And that was the genesis of my question. Are you, it sounds like you're aware, as long as you state your bias to the patient, like you're becoming the cross bracing protocol girl, but for lack of, whether you want to or not, but it's something you're very interested in. So therefore you might, even if you're saying you're not, still have a little bit of unconscious bias when you say it.
Dude,
So
I can't wait to have my first person go through
yeah,
the course. I'm
of
going to
course.
social media the shit out of that if they're up for it.
Yeah.
If they're not up for the stage, then I won't.
Yeah.
And I'll,
Right.
use like, I'll state stories, but I can't wait to have it. I like love following people. There's a couple of people on Instagram that are going through it and posting their stories, and I'm following them to learn what are their challenges and
Hmm.
all of that. Yeah, the day I get one, I'm gonna be the day I
Yeah.
talked to Tom Cross, I was fucking jumping up and down. I didn't even have
Yeah.
anything. That was almost a year ago. Like I'm a nut. Like,
Yeah.
I love
No,
it.
I
I
love
love
it.
that it's an option. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I see you like when you get a patient saying, yeah, I'll do it. I just see you going, hey, like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I mean, even Aaron at home, I was talking to him. He's like, yeah, this is really sweet. This is cool. I'm like, it's
yeah.
like just
And
different.
then I'm excited about it because it's just tearing down the old guard. So
Tear it down.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just
Well,
like,
just think about it. So like this weekend I was in Arizona for a
yeah,
course with Fred
I
Duncan
know I
and
wanted
Buddy
to wrap
Morris.
up with that, but we can talk about it.
But we can wrap up with that. But the course left me with more to think about than it taught me. Right. So like it
That's the
taught me
idea though.
totally. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like their mindset was, like ponder, think, like don't fucking sit here stagnant. Like, stop that shit and like try to think about what you're doing, challenge the norms. And there was a quote up and God, I can't like I don't know who it is right now, but it was just like, as soon as you get too close to the norm, like run the other direction. Like don't like if you're doing things the same as everybody's doing them, like you're not doing good. Like
Right,
go the other way. Or,
right.
or just at least sit back and think about things. And obviously you and
That's
I believe this. Buddy and Fred were all over that this weekend of like, we stopped thinking and we're fucking robots. Like think about what is happening. You
yeah.
don't need to do what everybody says. Like do what you want and what makes sense for you.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes from the consumer side to just like we just take what is fed to us and we don't question it enough. Like, thank God I grew up a contrarian, just who I am. That has
Yeah.
its pros and cons itself. But yeah, man, just questioning things and just being like, wait, does that make sense? But we live, and again, I always mention my ties to corporate America, but I see it every day of people just covering their ass. This is what the
Yeah.
rules are. I'm going to follow the rules. That way I won't get in trouble. Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, dude, somebody's got to make a decision.
Yeah.
And eventually you got to do that based in what you actually think versus what the downside is of like not having to bear any responsibility. So
Right. Right.
um, I like it. Okay, so that's a good foreground. ACL, you don't necessarily need surgery these days. There's a new protocol. We have an episode out on it. It came out of Australia. You're pushing that forefront. But there's a handful of issues as it relates to ACL, an injury that affects people of all ages. I know a good friend of mine in his 40s that, playing soccer tore it. I know it's prevalent in young girls in high school basketball, which is a passion point of yours. I know skiers are prone to it. So this is it kind of affects a wide range of populations that are both active and both like weekend warrior-ish,
Mhm.
for different level, many different reasons. And there's a handful of things that bother you on this. So we want to go down like kind of, I don't know if it's a myth list or it's more of a path to recovery list of putting people on the best path to optimize their recovery post ACL, and
Yep.
things to consider, and things to be aware of, dynamics that have nothing to do, if I'm a patient, between a doctor, a PT, and a surgeon. There's dynamics there in the background going on. It's good for me as a consumer to understand that, so that when people are talking to me, I know how to best digest the information. So
Yes.
understand this is coming from the PT world, but you're the one that sees all the shit, right? You see
Yeah.
the mess after everything's been done, and you're
Yep.
trying to get these people back. So, um, 4 or 5 things you want to rant on, and put in people's minds to think about. And if there's a certain population these affect, it'd be cool to call that out. But again, we know the injury itself affects everyone. Um,
Sure.
but all right, so lead us off here, Doc.
I mean, I think the first thing to talk about is from injury end. I mean, I didn't really put this on my list, and this isn't going to be the focus of today, but we don't know how to prevent these injuries,
Hmm.
right? Like we don't. There's ideas, there's concepts, there's best practices, there's things that, yes, we look for,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, right now, the model of understanding if we can prevent these isn't great. It's like back pain. Like the numbers keep going up.
Yeah.
So, and we keep gaining all of this knowledge, but the numbers keep going up.
Yeah.
So we're not to say we have a handle on understanding why these happen isn't really fair. Can we say it has something to do with cutting mechanics? Can we say something that has to do with some strength and how our hips land? Can we say in females that has something to do with their menstrual cycle, that the ligaments might be a little weaker at certain points?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen all of this stuff, but we also know sleep and recovery and nutrition, and there's a big push on collagen with regards to tendon and ligament health and bone health and all of that.
Yeah.
There's so many factors that and I have gone and got a certification in a ACL preventative program, like, which is total bullshit. It's great knowledge. It's great knowledge, and it's definitely stuff I still practice, and like nuggets from that I think are important.
Yeah.
But from the preventative side, we have no fucking idea, and to preach that isn't fair. So we talk a lot about readiness. We talk about overall global health as factors, and I think you can do the best you can do in those scenarios.
Yeah. And at
So
the pro level, guys like Clay Thompson dunk and they land crazily on one leg, or in the, NFL, a linebacker comes full speed and swipes at you with his leading with his head from the side, and there's
yeah, I
nothing
mean,
you can do.
contact ones, forget it. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
those are a different breed. I think when we
Right.
talk prevention, we're talking non-contact in my head, at
Yeah, and
least.
we're talking civilians for the most part, or youth athletes or weekend warriors. But
For
the
sure.
whole point is there's a wide array of ways that this happens. So
Right.
I've talked about and posted before, like everything ACL and healthcare alike. Everything's a probability model, right? Even we had Dean Oliver on, the NBA analytics coach pioneer. Like
Yep.
he was talking about predictive. He's like, all we're doing is taking everything we know and saying this seems to be the
Seems.
best outcome. So
Yep.
let's do that, implement it, and then we got to watch how it plays out
Correct.
and then reincorporate that. And it's a constant feedback loop. Ray
And
Dalio, and
revisit and
yeah,
keep looking at that and keep understanding that. I have somebody that was going to come see me who's at one of the top, what I would consider one of the top D1 programs, where they have everything fucking lined up.
Yeah.
every single thing they need from, you know, like all the best practices, all the technology, all
Yeah.
the things. And this girl went back and tore her other side, like within
Right.
2 weeks being back in dude, they did everything, you know, and so you can't, I don't know if the second injury was contact or not, but
Yeah.
like you can't predict. What you can predict is you're going to get injured at some point. And the more robust and the more ready you are to manage injury, the
Yeah.
better.
Yep.
And survive and, you know,
That's it.
survive in advance, right?
Yeah, and I've brought it up. I think I brought it up on the Ed Lattimore podcast, but Ray Dalio, he's a huge hedge fund guy. He wrote a book on principles, and he did all about designing systems, but the systems like never end. It's this constantly
Right.
feedback loop. Put a plan in place, execute the plan, analyze the plan, redo it again. What's not working? Is it people? Is it systems? Is it product? You know, like it's a constant thing. So,
Right. So you need to learn the ability to think, and you need to learn the ability to change direction quick, you know, and like,
no
so like
doubt, no doubt.
everybody, you know, from a strength training performance side to PTs, like if you come in, if you have a plan and you're rigid in your plan, you're never going to give somebody fully what they need, because if they need that, like, I can't tell you how many times I write up like what I would consider the perfect plan for that day, and somebody comes in and they're like, you know, oh, I fucked up my hip yesterday. Like, oh, great.
Yep.
Fucking rip that up and fucking
Yeah.
throw it out. Great. Okay, let's go.
Yep. Yep.
So, you know, the ability to pivot and change, I think is really important. So yeah, that's kind of the overarching like preventative stuff.
Okay. So you
So again,
can't.
like when we get through this, like I'm talking, a lot of what I talk about is clinical experience,
Yeah.
talking to others, seeing things. Yes, that incorporates research. But that's what evidence-based practice is, you know, taking everything into account. But
Everything's a probability model. Like you, it's yeah, you're placing a bet on the odds,
yeah,
and then you're outlining to whoever is implementing the risks on the downside of the probability it doesn't go that way,
correct.
and going. So okay, so understand prevention is not 100% accurate. There's no perfect model. There's no perfect um, training program. There's no perfect preparation, depending on your age, activity level, or whatever. It's all probability, and there's some good ideas out there that seem to be maybe probably
We have no
be
fucking idea, quite frankly. So go
we have
ahead.
no fucking idea, right? Yeah, you're on fire today. So but the whole point is like these are tried and true things that won't hurt you in of themselves. They're not putting
Right,
you in a bad position.
right.
Whether it increases or decreases your probability of that injury happening when it happens is unknown, and that's the point. So
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so we have 4 or 5 things in this world of ACLs, though. Like once the ACL is torn, um, there's a bunch of dynamics going on between the PT, the doctor, the surgeon, the patient, feelings, you know, all of this stuff on the road to full recovery as best as possible that aren't myths, but they're kind of things that kind of grind your gears, to use a Family Guy reference.
yeah.
So let's outline like these 4 or 5 things that will kind of help people understand the dynamic that happens in our healthcare system when this
Okay.
happens.
So the first, you know, the overarching theme of it will be that understanding, number one, that any rehab, and we're going to talk ACL rehab today, is more about a continuum of care, is how I love that it's being deemed these days, like a continuum of care versus a protocol and timelines. So
Mm,
having
yeah,
specific timelines for things isn't great. And I'm not saying it's not great to have goals,
yeah,
but when we're telling people that they should be back to sport in 6 months, that's a high school female athlete with a ton of stuff happening in their life other than sports.
yep,
And they don't hit what I would consider the criteria needed to return to sports by 6 months, they feel crappy about themselves. And or the first time they meet me, whether it's very beginning of their care or towards the end stages of their care. And I'm very point blank that I don't really even like to entertain return to sport at 9 months, and still that I don't like to put a time frame on it.
Yeah.
You're ready when you're ready.
Yep.
You're ready when you're ready. You're not ready because it's fucking 9 months out or 6 months out.
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, Buddy Morris, and I feel I said this to my clinics the other day, gave me the quote of
Buddy Morris, strength and conditioning coach of the Arizona Cardinals.
correct.
Often
Yep.
deemed strength conditioning coach of the year.
He was, yes.
Yeah.
And he right now rehabs their ACL injuries. That's his goal. Anybody who has an ACL in the Cardinals is his. So it ended up being a lot about ACLs this weekend, which was cool.
Yeah.
But, you know, I brought up a question to him and he's like, you know, there's a big gap between medical clearance and physical clearance. And it's wide. Medically, is that graft by physiology and healing timeframes and all this shit ready at 6 months? Yeah, sure. Yep. If you go in there and you test it, sure. Yeah, it's medically ready, but the physical preparation, the mental preparation, and all of that is so much more than 6 months. So
yep.
The time frame stuff is probably the stuff that really bothers me, and that it just bothers me, and that we're not moving past that. Like there was a time like where that was how I practiced too, but we just see it so much more. And my orthopedics in this area are still telling fucking 15-year-old girls that they'll be back to their sport in 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like point blank. Like I've talked to them, they say that.
Yeah.
And I don't have anybody that I've cleared in 6 months.
Right. And that's we talked about nocebos in one episode. Like you tell somebody in 6 months you'll be back, and then 6 months comes and they're not ready. They feel shitty, like they're doing something wrong, and that just totally demotivates them. You know, puts stress on them. That adds a layer of complexity to the rehab. Yeah. So the timeline thing, and that's a narrative that is lived in sports, right? Like Clay, bust his ACL in the NBA finals, and they were like, he'll be ready by opening day. And so doctors working with 16-year-old girls adopt that mentality that they see in the sports world of they'll be back here, and they are confident telling that to a young adolescent with all this stuff.
Now listen, I'm not opposed to saying like fractures generally heal in somewhere between 6 and 12 weeks. Like we know physiology, we know science, we know when tissue healing happens. But you have a living human being that has way more experiences than a tissue injury. So you don't know what their life is like. You don't know what they're eating yet. You don't know like are they preparing themselves to heal? Are they taking care of themselves? Are they sleeping? Are they putting the work in? Are they like, there's so many factors. And so, you know, to your point, like I think it's okay to give a timeline. Here's the thing about the 6 month timeline is it's fucking wrong. It's not right.
Yeah.
It's not even fucking right for an NFL player.
It's 9 to 12, right?
Minimum.
Yeah.
And then they're still in rehab for at least another year after that. It's a 2-year process.
Yeah. I mean, Klay Thompson's still not the same. He's not the same dude.
And so, I think that's a great point is that, rehab is really being looked at as like this timeline process and you're done, where when you get into that second year, now you can build. Yeah. So it doesn't mean you're not back, but you can't stop. And so it's number one, the timelines are wrong. And it's not even like just it is that clear cut. And if I was having a tough conversation with a high school kid the other day, and I said, what if you wait 3 more months and you're crushing all the metrics, you're crushing all the things, you're 4 months out right now, we're barely cutting, we're not even like, and now we got to return you to drills, and then slowly return you to practices, and then into contact, and then non-contact, then contact, then scrimmaging, and then we're going to build your time up for scrimmaging, and then we're going to get you back to the game. But when you start the games, you have to have a full month of scrimmaging unrestricted underneath you. And then when you get back to the game, if you're playing a 4-quarter game, you're going to play 2 minutes a quarter, right? Like in the NBA, you hear it all the time, limited minutes. That's part of the rehab process.
Right. Right.
So, at the pinnacle levels, like that's easy because that like kind of sort of, but because everybody sort of works
Right.
together. In the
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
school athletics, the fucking cluster because nobody's talking to each other.
Yeah. They don't
You're
have
saying 6 months. I'm saying minimum 9, you have to hit X, Y, and Z. Coaches,
parents.
parents, can go either way.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're more conservative, they're scared, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
Coaches saying, well, you can scrimmage, why can't you play? Because
Right.
there's a big difference between scrimmaging and
Oh,
playing.
by the way, you're a social studies teacher.
Yeah. Uh, um, I got nothing.
Yeah.
So they're, yeah, so the timeframes, that are still being said are wrong and not fair.
Yeah.
And then, so then I get so passionate about this because the first time I get these people, 8 times out of 10, it's fucking tears. Like, and I feel god awful that they've
Yeah.
never heard that. I mean, I have to be very careful of like when I deliver that message, how I deliver it. It's delivered early on, but also with a clear plan.
Yep.
Listen, I'm going to get you there. I'm going to help you get there. You got to put the work in. I'm going to put the work in.
Yeah.
These are the steps we're going to take. When we can do this, you can do that. When you can do this, we can do that. When you can do, jump, we can consider running. When you
Yeah.
can run, we can then start cutting. When you can cut, we can then start drills. When you can do, and so there's
Yeah.
progressiveness, like a progressive nature to it.
Yeah.
And you can line that out for somebody so they can see that.
It's a big problem with
just say 6 months, go back to sport is acid.
That's exactly where I was going. It's a big problem just in the medical world. They just go 6 months, you're gonna be good. And
Yeah.
there's no context, there's no explanation, there's no what if, there's no contingency.
I just had a girl come out of a cast for 12 weeks and her physician didn't even fucking order physical therapy.
Right. Right.
She plays soccer. She's going to be fine playing soccer.
Yeah.
But her arm is the size of a stick. Like she's in shape, so she lost everything in this arm,
Yeah.
and did not even care. And I don't say something. Say
Right.
go strength train this. Say go get your ring. Say something, not
Yeah.
just you're good. You'll be good to play in 4 weeks.
Yeah, those tears you're getting when you deliver the message, while I'm sure they're upsetting tears, I think they're probably more relief too, because they just never heard a full comprehensive message. And it's almost, I bet you it's like sad but thankful, like, okay,
Well, I
like
think in that conversation is I'm with you, like
correct.
I'm here with you. You got
Yeah.
questions, mom, you got questions, dad, you
Yeah.
got questions,
I'm
coach, you
sorry
got
you're
questions.
hearing this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm the one, but listen, I fully believe in this because I want this to work. I don't want you to do this again. People go back early all the time and then re-tear. We're just like, well, that's the research. I just had that happen with somebody that was pushed back early and not, fully invested. I'm not fully invested in returning, and they tear the other side. Like, oh, 5% of you will fucking tear it the next time.
Yeah, I'm already montaging all the swears from this one.
Sorry. But
Good. Keep going.
yeah, but so, and I don't disagree because that research does state that you're at a higher, that you might tear the other side and all that, but God damn it, we didn't even give them a chance to fully recover.
So
we didn't even give them a chance, and now they're out another year.
And
now they'll listen to me.
All right, calm down. Hold on.
Sorry.
What I like about this, is this isn't ACL specific. You know what I mean? So number one is what I want to, like, people are obviously parents and have kids, but people, adults like myself and weekend warriors can tear their ACLs too. Then I'm thinking cancer and heart patients. I used to be in cardiac rehab, and doctors say, you can go back to exercise and cardiac working out and running and walking. The timeline thing is like, just people need to understand if a doctor gives you a hard timeline, you should minor red flag, yellow flag in the back of your mind, and just either question that or seek out other expertise in the discipline that you're trying to rehab or recover from. Because as we talk about N of one all the time, everyone's individual. Your health, your diet, your exercise program, the way you respond to something is going to be completely different. So when a doctor's giving you a hard timeline on something, it's just like to me, I was being nice with yellow flag. It's immediate red flag. It's immediate red flag. You have to understand that a timeline should be positioned as a general framework to then reassess where you are at that point, if nothing else.
Yeah.
versus you'll be good.
Yeah.
So it's a better way to level
It's a
expectations.
bell curve, right?
It's a
Like
bell
some
curve,
there's smokers that live to be 100.
no
Dude,
doubt.
like that happens, right? Like that's not normal. You shouldn't smoke. Like,
Yeah,
okay, like I
yeah,
know you know your buddy down the street lived to 99 and smoked 2 fucking packs a day. Like it's still not good to smoke,
yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
So it's just, there are outliers. And I do make that clear to people when they want to return is like, listen, 9 to 12 months is kind of my thing. Like that's what I recommend. That's what I see.
Yeah,
There is some research showing that every month you wait after 9 months, that your risk exponentially goes down
yeah.
for another injury. It goes down. So that is there. If you're ready at 8 months
Already.
and you're showing me all the things I need to see,
Yeah.
I still don't want you to return until 9 just because of that underlying research. But man, if you're fucking ready, then let's go.
Right.
Like if
Yep.
you're proving to me you're ready, and in the NFL, you'll see people come back at 7, 8 months, and guess what they're doing? 6 hours a day.
Leg
Fucking
extension.
rehabbing.
Yeah.
And guess who's making all their meals and feeding them collagen and feeding them
Yeah.
vitamins,
Yep.
taking care of everything else for them. And that became very clear to me this weekend with who I was around in that space. That's like if they have everything that they need, all they need to focus on all day is rehab. They're not worried about their social circles that much, like in that space. They're not worried,
Yeah.
about getting their period for the first time. Like they're not worried about their social identity right now being taken, although it is, I'm not saying that's not
For
part of
sure. Yeah, for
of
sure.
being, you're worried about $1 million contracts. Like, so,
Yep.
there's different scopes of things, but man, like your food and your this, like all of that is just, you have access to all that. As a high schooler, you could, but you have to pay for it.
Yep.
And, you have to commit to it. And you're young at that point to care
Okay.
sometimes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I am beyond pleased with your level of ranting
Oh,
and
yes,
enthusiasm today. Um, so let's do the takeaway. Timelines there shouldn't be a hard timeline.
correct.
Number two is specific to ACLs. 6 months is just wrong. If
Yeah.
you're going to give a timeline, it should be 9 to 12, probably more 12. But N of one, you reassess during that time period. Eyeball
All-
test, seeing
You
them
can use
actually do.
technology tests,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah, yeah. And then seeing them actually do the sports, them doing probably RPEs, ratings of perceived exertion, how they're feeling, all of that is taken into context. But hard level setting context for everyone that this is going to be unique to you. This is a general time frame. We'll see how you're doing, but don't get don't go too high or too
I'm
low
married
here.
to it.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. It's very much akin to society too. Don't worry about what the salary of your neighbor is across the street. Just focus on making money, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So same thing. Okay. So timelines are all fucked up. Number
Yeah.
two, let's go. Let's keep going. I'm
All right. So
feeling
also
this one.
I had to open with the timelines because everything else that we'll talk about really will fall
Waterfall.
into
Yep.
this. So the first, so this is kind of born off of things I see. A lot of times when I'll see people secondhand that didn't start, like with me, and then they're like, okay, I'm 4 months out, I'm ready for the higher level stuff, and they come to me and I'm like, you don't have the foundations. I'm not going to prescribe you the higher level stuff because you don't have the foundations yet. So the first one that really, really aggravates me is having a crappy quad. So in ACL rehab, even in school, they teach you need quad setting and you need to be able to fire your quad muscles, and your quads are going to be very important in ACL rehab, in knee rehab in general.
And you say even in school because we don't necessarily like school these days.
Well, they don't teach you everything, but even in school, even when you're rehabbing a knee at the shittiest place, at wherever you are, the quad is a focus. It's known.
In that school, the broken clock is right twice a day. Even they got the quad down.
Yes. So, but here's the problem is that, in the beginning of rehab, you might do, most people will do a quad setting exercise. Simply put, you're squeezing your quad tight with your legs straight and you're trying to get your quad to pop up and see it. Immediately after a knee surgery, that is near impossible. Your brain controls you. So you just put this thing through significant trauma. So it doesn't want to fire the quad because it's thinking it needs to protect you. Thank you, body, but we need to move on. Okay.
Mhm.
So people will give this basic exercise of quad sets, which is literally just squeeze your quad. And I say literally, but it is extremely hard in the first 2 weeks, sometimes up to 4 weeks. Very hard. So when you go, so when people come, if they're given quad sets and then never looked at again, which is what happens a lot, or their PT isn't with them when they're doing their quad sets, people can do all sorts of things to make it feel like they're doing a quad set when they're not. So, people will, and to me, that is simple of an exercise as it is. And yes, we're going to need load on that quad, but if you can't find your quad, you can't work your quad. So if you can't find it, and then you're asking people to do higher level exercises that require your quad, they're not going to do that.
So define find it.
If you put your leg out straight, put your heel on the ground, and squeeze the hell out of your quad, but don't lift it up. So your leg is all the way out straight, and you can, if you're doing it well, or if you have a good quad set, you can see your quad muscle pop up. Your knee drives down into extension. If you're doing that when you're on a table, for a lot of people, for most people, you're with a healthy leg going on, your heel will lift off the ground, but your knee stays on the table. So what happens a lot is when people do these in the beginning, because it's near impossible to fire the quad, they'll pull up like into their hip muscles. They'll pull and they're like feeling like they're doing it, but they're firing their hamstring and their knees actually bending and not straightening. So there's a lot of compensations that can happen. Those are the two most I see, but without establishing that base, everything else sucks. So, and like you have to build that base once you have it. So once people have a quad set, things like standing on one leg will be easier. Things like walking will be more comfortable, because in gait, when your heel hits the ground and transitions to a flat foot, your quad needs to pull your knee into extension and hold you in extension as you advance to the next step. So we'll do some gait training and have some awareness with that too. But if you can't fire your quad in the most silent of a scenario, when you go heavier or harder, it's not going to fire. Well.
And how soon post surgery on the road to recovery, like how soon are you working on this quad stuff after somebody kind of injures their stuff?
As soon as possible, and even better pre-surgery. So prehab,
and not to put a timeline on it, but it was, is there
so prehab to me, like meaning having PT prior to surgery date, is invaluable, because they can see, they can feel, and they can see what they're supposed to do, and then you can tell them, hey, when you wake up, this is going to be impossible. But once, but it's going to be important. You felt it, you saw it, like this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. Again, it's not absolutes, but this is what happens after knee surgery for the big bell curve of people. Some people come out with a quad set and you're like, holy cow, cool. But you also have to be careful with them because they're going to be feeling great. So a prehab. So as soon as possible, like I like to get established this. After surgery, controlling swelling will be something that helps, and that is more about a compression, elevation, and some gentle movements. Ice is okay for pain relief the first couple of days, but getting off that and getting movement going is more important. A lot of people feel they need to live on ice for days or are told they should ice for all the time when they're sitting down, and that kind of slows down the healing process, which we have talked about before.
We've talked about,
So establishing a quad is by far one of the most important things. So like I'll get people like 4 months out, and they were doing fine. And then their PT or their coach or whoever had them start running, and then their knee's blowing up and it hurts. And they're running on a knee that hurts.
Hmm.
Well, that sucks. Like that's not fun. And to me, that's not how it's supposed to be.
Right.
So, and then like one of the very first things I'll do is I'll just lay them down, like, okay, let's just check your foundations. And I ask them to do a quad set and they got nothing.
You got
And I'm like,
nothing.
shit. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard after 4 months.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
it's doable, but it's very hard. Now you have 5 months of compensation underneath you versus 3-4 weeks.
Right.
Um, so establishing that, and then so if people are having knee pain following like real like knee pain, not like the tendons, which could be another conversation, but like real knee pain after having a knee surgery, again, not an absolute, but I see more often than not their quad is not helping them.
Mm. Mm.
It has to work or they fall down, but it's
Yeah.
not engaging the way it should to support that leg.
Yep.
So to me, that really, really is like, how are we making somebody start jogging if they can't fire their quad? Like, why is that even
Right.
okay? Like,
Right.
so again, like this kind of goes into like timeline stuff is like, a lot of people hit 4 months and on the protocol it says you can start jogging. So PTs are like, oh, you can start jogging at 4 months. Yay. Like, we're going to start jogging today. And like, they haven't had any thought behind what was required for jogging.
Right.
The
Right.
criteria I use for jogging to say that you can return to jogging, which means you can do 1 minute of jogging and 3 minutes of walking 3 times. It's not go run a mile and start to
Right.
build it,
Yeah.
right?
Just, yeah. Yeah.
So, but so like one of the criteria, and again, the criteria isn't set in stone, but it's like, again, see it, think it, like, is it there? Is that you have to be able to do 15 to 20 single leg heel raises nicely. You have to be able to do 15 to 20 single leg squats nicely. If you can't single leg squat or it hurts the single leg squat, what the fuck do you think running is going to do?
Yeah.
Like, it's just
Yeah.
not even, it's just common sense to me, like at this point, right?
Right.
So, and then you have to be able to hop on that leg. And they don't have to look perfect, but you have to be able to tolerate the load of hopping side to side, forward and backwards.
Yeah.
And then in the ideal world, if you have the availability, you test the quad strength. And that should be around 80% of the affected to the non-affected in order for me to say you can go jog.
Expand on that.
On the testing.
Yeah. The
So
80 to
in
20.
the ideal, in the gold standard world, there's a big old very expensive machine called a biodex, which you push against and it will give you a read of how many pounds of force you're putting through.
Gotcha.
And that's the gold standard. I don't have that. Most people don't have that. I don't even know if there's one in my area right now.
Yeah.
So I would send people out to be tested if there was
Mm.
one that was being utilized.
Yeah.
Even though it wouldn't be mine, like I just
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
know where it's at. We have what's called a handheld dynamometer, which is something we set up around a stable surface, and they kick into it and build up as much force as they can
Yeah.
into the extension. And then it gives me a read on the affected side. I'll get a read on the unaffected side and I'll calculate the percentage.
Gotcha.
So
And
if
you
you
want
have
the,
100 pounds on the left and your right's the affected, if that's 80 pounds, that would be 80%.
and that's deemed kind of acceptable to test. One of the things that's deemed acceptable to go test some light jogging with mixed with walking.
Yeah, all of those things together, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
if somebody's at 75%, but is crushing everything else,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that's
Using your
fine.
brain, using
Use your brain,
judgment. Yeah.
look at the person, their knee. So we say like use the term like a quiet knee. Like the
Yeah.
knee needs to be quiet. Like if the
Mm.
knee's blowing up on you all the
Yeah.
time, swelling, like something isn't right. Like
Yeah. Or they're
you're not
whatever.
supporting it, you're
They're
aggravating it.
grimacing. Yeah.
Yeah, or you're just not ready. Like you're just
Yeah.
going a little like a little slower with the process. God
Mhm.
forbid. That's not a bad thing. It just fucking is, right?
Yeah.
So so yeah, the quad, so again, like, but and that return to sport criteria I have kind of adopted through like Mick Hughes and again an Australian kind of practice.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be exactly that. It's just people have to have some thought of what do they want to see before somebody returns to jogging. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's not normal. And I just don't understand it. And I don't, even if you don't have criteria, if somebody's constantly complaining of knee pain
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's 4 months out, why are you running?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just
It's
doesn't
so
make
many,
sense.
just so many parallels in business. People are always looking for an answer with like partnerships we're doing with somebody. And it's just like, what's the answer? And I'm like, there isn't one.
Right.
It's a conversation
It's
with
vague.
with our client. They want to do something that we didn't contractually agree upon. Do they pay
Right.
us more money, or do we do it for them anyway because they're a good paying like it's a conversation all the time, and we
Right.
evaluate and blah blah blah. So yeah, just using the brain and thinking a little bit and evaluating what's in front of you, along with some key metrics. But again, using your eyes is so important, especially with
Yeah.
this physical stuff. All right, so we got the timeline. We want so people, again, red flag if the timeline is giving you a hard timeline with no context, number one. Also 6 months, that should be a red flag because it's probably wrong. Number
Fucking wrong.
two
No,
is
it's not probably wrong. It's fucking wrong.
it's just fucking wrong.
Sorry.
And
Go
then
ahead.
yeah, you're doing great. And then two here is there should be a heavy focus, a heavy bias in your training and your rehab on what your quad is capable of before somebody says go out and do anything, let alone jogging, but test some activity, test some walking or running. Like people should be focused. If you haven't had a conversation around how strong your quad is, if you can find your quad, if you can perform a certain amount of test, that should be a red flag if somebody's giving you to go ahead do other things that they haven't focused on your quad strength.
Yeah, so I think, if you're in a scenario where you are in rehab and the stuff is being said, and like you're saying, like, obviously, if most athletes that go through this want to run, like they're like, can't wait for that day.
Yeah.
Right. So they're already calculating because of the physician told them at 4 months you can run. When, March 2nd, I can run. Like that, this is how it goes, especially if you have a driven athlete. But
Yeah.
you should be asking like your PTs, what do you see that makes you think I can run?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you, and that's like when I mentor PTs, like, what are you seeing that you feel confident given your stamp that they're going to run? And it doesn't mean you don't screw up and maybe it is sore after.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that because that does happen, but then you change your programming. If it's a minute run, maybe it's 30 seconds. And
Yep.
then, and then you find what they can do and move forward. So again, like I have a return to run protocol that I give,
Yep.
but it's up for discussion. You're
Yeah.
flying, you feel great, cool. We can go
Yeah.
2 minutes, 3 minutes, then let's
This
roll.
is I had a back in my true sports days, I had a conversation at the MIT analytics conference with the cornerback coach from the Dallas Cowboys. And we were just talking about this was before like analytics really took over the NFL. And he was like, when I get a game plan, I want to know the percentage of times my opponent that coming week is doing certain things. And then I can allocate my percentage of practice time to my guys. So we
Sure.
were talking about that, and there's the probability, right? So it's like
Sure.
when a coach scripts their first 10 plays for a game, they're like, based on all the tendencies, based on this defense, based on this, we're going to go out, we're going to do these first 10 plays and see how the defense is reacting. If everything's going great, we're going to stick to this game plan. But if it doesn't work because they're looking at your tendencies and they've made adjustments, you have to go back to the playbook and be like, okay, here's everything else we got to do because the protocol is not working. So sports always provides great analogies.
Yes, for sure.
But football is a great one where you game plan, you look at strategies, you look at tendencies, you look at probabilities. Boxing is another one. You look at somebody's tendencies. I'm going to go in like this, and they totally throw something else at you that you didn't account for. You have
Right.
to adjust. No different than healthcare. No
Yep,
different
for
than healthcare.
sure. For
All right.
everything. So and then, the next one kind of bleeds into that. So it's returning to run too early and then making this nice quiet knee not quiet anymore. And now
Yeah.
we're back to pain control versus moving forward. And again, everybody's different and that will happen. It does happen to my clients and we just pivot and like we
Yeah.
listen to the body and move on.
Yeah.
The deeper one obviously is the return to sports too early. So we've already beat to how the timeline stuff, but again, like what, as a treating clinician, as a physician, what are you clearing them on?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, what are you looking at what is making you say, I feel really confident in you? Like
Hmm.
what it, and from a PT side, a lot of that is that they've been working with me for months. And
Right.
months I've seen them. I have somebody the other day that was cutting and went down. Like she took a hit to her ego. She thought she was doing great, man. Like, and she went like down. She's like, oh man, I don't like that. Like how that felt, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like this is what 5 months looks like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're going to get through the weeds. But what if I didn't do this stuff with you and you return to sport next month? What does it look like then? Right.
Yeah.
So
I
again,
make
like,
another parallel in business, like all the time. I love when an idea doesn't work.
right,
I was like,
right.
that's good data for me. So like
Yep,
when new management comes
totally.
in, which happens all the time, and they're like, we're gonna do
Yep,
this. I'm like, all right, well, we fucking tried that and it flopped. But if you think you're gonna execute it differently, here's the implications of when it fails. And then go
right.
ahead. You're gonna do it different, go ahead. But
I love that. Like the again, a lot of awesome nuggets from my course this weekend. But Buddy Morris, he he was just saying like what's different between, as you can't make up experience. So when
wisdom.
you're around
Yeah.
mentors,
Yeah.
like, and when your mentors are being mentored and your mentors have people that they lean on and they don't feel like they know it all. Like one of my favorite moments this weekend was Buddy and Craig Liebenson was there, and they were starting to have, like, Craig was questioning him, and he was like, and like you could feel the room just sit back. Like, here's 90 years of experience going. Like,
Right.
I'm not fucking saying anything. I'm just
Yeah.
sitting here like, oh, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things he talked about was, you know, um,
That had to be after.
what
Yeah.
be what pushes you kind of into an expert category is you've learned like you've made the mistakes. So for the
Mm.
next generation, you're trying to teach them what mistakes you have made, not the successes.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you can push the successes, but you're still learning more. But like the mistakes you made are more beautiful than anything,
Right.
even if they suck, even if they're hard ones,
Yeah.
even if
Right.
it's hard lessons, because then you're, being like more, aware of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the return to sport too early thing, again, like what, why? Tell me why, like prove to me why you can.
Yeah.
As a clinician, I want to see certain things. As a client, I want them to feel certain things.
Yeah.
What we're seeing so much is just the 6-month appointment. The docs are like, you're cleared. And, if I've had people write through, I'm like, so the words you're going to hear tomorrow from your doctor are you're cleared. You understand you're not, right? Like, do you understand why you're not yet? And oh yeah, I can't, like we've done this. I can't, like, I'm not there
Yeah.
yet,
Right. Right.
what's harder is those that think they can return. And even if you've worked with them and they go back and they're cleared and they
Yeah.
like, and
This is the medical versus physical clearance where the
correct.
surgeon or the doctor is like, okay, your ACL is fully intact.
Yep.
So
And
therefore you're
it's,
clear.
oh, it's, oh, look at that. I pull at it. It's stiff. That's fucking great. How much
Yeah.
force are you pulling with compared to what's on the field?
Right.
Great.
Right.
Awesome. So
Yep.
did you even look at a single leg squat? Like they can't even sit down. I'm not even jogging yet because
Yeah.
they can't do a single, like,
Yeah.
so again, like the gap between when should you and when can you, it's just shit. It's just not good.
Yeah.
So the return to sport, again, like return to sport, we alluded to this in the beginning. Again, I think as a clinician, you're laying this out from day one. You need to get a quad. You need to get a quad so that you can squat. You need to squat so that you can jump. You need to jump so that you can run. You need to run so that you can cut. You need to cut so that you can get back to drills. You need to get back to drills that are non-contact to prepare yourself. And then we'll add in a layer of unknown, somebody working against you in
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah.
And so
I,
like that return to sport piece has some sort of cadence to it and it's evolving. If
yeah.
you go back to drills, full force drills, and your knee blows up, we're going to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're going to quiet the knee down, and then we're going to get back, and then we're going to do drills. And instead of doing 2 times in a row, we're going to do them 3 times in a row. And then we're gonna say, okay, how you feel now? Oh, great. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm through that. That's no problem. Okay,
Yeah.
next step. Let's add this. So, you know, when you're looking at that and, you know, not discounting, like playing in a game is the pinnacle of your training,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not the, and it can be rehab. Like part of rehab is getting back to things, but you know, playing in a game is a pinnacle. So, you know, my criteria when people are getting back, like from a progression standpoint, is that they can do drills, non-contact drills, then they can do contact drills, then they can do live play, you know, if it's basketball half court in, you know, or let's get some 3-on-3 play or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep.
And then it's full scrimmaging,
Yep.
but we limit minutes with scrimmaging.
Yep.
So if your team's going to scrimmage for 20 minutes, you might do 2 to 3
Mm-hmm.
and then take a 5-minute break and then 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And then, but that's load management, right? Right. Like
Yeah.
that's managing forces and managing exposures. And then after that, when they've are back to full scrimmaging, I like to see that you're full scrimmaging full out for a month. And then once you're full scrimmaging for a month, then we're going to go to play. And then when we play, it's 2 minutes a quarter. And
Right.
then you do that twice and you feel great. Okay. 3 to 4 minutes a quarter.
Yeah.
Oh, guess what? My knee got sore. Oh, what was different? The pace of the game was so much higher. Oh, okay. Do you know the next team you're playing? What's the pace of their game? Oh, they're really slow. We're good. Cool. Go 4 minutes again there.
Mm.
Okay, what's the next team? Oh, they're sprint. They roll on the court. We're flying up and down. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go back down to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in my world, my ideal Allison perfect little cloud filled sunny with nice clouds world
Yep.
is that, you know, like we could have these conversations with the coaches and they would do it. Right now, I have one coach who's asking, you know, she doesn't want to do the fucking paperwork for her kid to play in sectionals because they need 6 games to play in sectionals, or they need to do paperwork to clear them. Oh, you can't just play 2 minutes a game? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, sorry,
No.
you're gonna have to
No.
file the fucking paper. You want me to fill it out so you can sign it? Like, whatever you want me to do. But
Yeah.
like that, like the understanding, and obviously it gets better as we get into higher level sports, we think,
Yeah.
which isn't true per se. And guess what? The coach's job is to put the best players on the court or field. Like, so
Right.
they're going to try to do their job. And my job is to, you know, mitigate the risk of injury the best I can based on the given knowledge in front of me. And, you know, everybody has their role. And I'm not saying we shouldn't press each other, but, you know, in high school sports, especially, the communication is atrocious because
Yeah.
it's not a team, you know.
Right.
We try, but it's tough.
Yeah.
So
How does any of this change for weekend warrior people? The rec, the basketball rec guy, the skier, the tennis club person, because it's an injury that decimates my population a lot. Like you can't, there isn't cutting and there isn't scrimmaging.
right.
How does that slightly vary for, a lot of the people that we were talking to?
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard.
Harder.
Again, because if they're playing 2 times a week typically, and it's just
Once.
all out,
Yeah.
or once a week and it's just all out, you know, I mean, it's a deep discussion of you need to prepare yourself for what you're going to do,
Yeah.
you know. And I have people all the time. I'm like, here's your risk, here's your reward. You here, like you take
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I played ball hard for the first time in 2 years.
Right. And you know, when you're playing in pickup leagues, you know, sometimes if you're playing basketball, you're playing 5-on-5, 10 people show up. So you don't even have the chance to just take yourself out.
Right.
Right. Like if 10
Yep.
people show up and you guys want to run for 2 hours,
And
if
that's
somebody leaves, it changes the whole landscape. So
right.
there's a lot of pressure to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, I really try to make a very clear path and give people things to do, like, you know, in the gym and in there, here and there. And in the ideal world, you show up for the first half hour and you're very clear about it, that you have to take breaks. And then there's reality. You're 100% spot on with that. But it does become about preparation. And, you know, weekend warriors, I think we do terrible job of introducing like cutting and sprinting with them. And then they're going back to pick up soccer or pick up basketball.
Yeah.
Skiing can be the same. I think skiers get it a little bit more because it's so prevalent with them. So
Yeah,
like the
right.
skiers I have that are recreational skiers, I'm like, do you remember when you learned to ski? Like I'm a new skier, right? Like this is my second year. Like if I'm going back to what I learned last year, like I gotta walk in my skis, you know, I'm gonna go down the little hill and just whee, and get an edge,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like find that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like some of these really great skiers that have skied their whole life, I'm like, go down the green
Yeah.
mountain, an
Yeah.
easy one, and
Yeah.
just go slow.
Yeah.
Big turns. So I'll try, you know, giving them sport specific stuff because nothing will,
Yeah.
anything we do in the gym isn't their sport. I don't care how sport specific you're being, it's not their sport,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So it's
Right.
not. So in
Right.
order to expose yourself to the sport, you have to do the sport.
I
So for
know.
skiers, I'll say, you know, go down a green, like if we're doing drills, like big wide turns,
Yeah.
stop. Like, do you remember, have you taught anybody how to ski? Teach
Yeah.
yourself like you're learning for the first time.
Yeah.
You know, and then gain confidence, and then gain confidence, and
Yeah.
you know, then move on to the next thing. So skiing's a little easier if they'll listen to it, and most of them are scared, so they will listen to it.
Yeah.
But then once they get their edges, they're like, I'm out, like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
But
um,
it's different. Like I went hard. I played hoops. First time I played 5-on-5. Now again, we've talked about I train pretty well. I'm more prepared than the average person, but I'm not prepared. I wasn't prepared for that. Like I was really sore for two
yeah,
days. Like
yeah.
like oh, like stiff store. And a badge of honor is like it's a wide range of ages. Like because I'm still like relatively like they threw a 24-year-old kid on me.
Right,
So
right.
me and this 24-year-old are going fucking back and forth, and like your ego gets involved. So like these, people like myself, like I'm not gonna jinx, but like, those people getting them back versus parents coaching their kids who have practice, who have drills twice a week. These
Right.
people are at desk jobs. Yeah, they
Yes.
only have that hour a week. So
Yep.
educating them on giving them some sort of repetition that
Yep.
isn't
Some
necessarily,
exposure, right? Exposure to them.
yeah,
You know, can you go just shoot around at the gym?
right.
Can you go just cut, you
You
know,
got
like
to
get on
make a
the
little
court?
time for that stuff.
Yeah, so I mean that, you know, again, you lay it out and people make their choices, right? So,
Yeah,
you know, this is ideally how it would go. If you were on a sports team, this is what we would do. This is how I would recommend doing this. Can you go with a buddy and play a little one-on-one, like within the paint and, you know, not very far out? Like,
right.
can you do that? And some people choose to, and some people jump in, and then you deal with it, you know, but you give them, I think you lay out all the information, you give them as much exposure, you know, give them as much readiness, and you know, those people don't always like finish out rehab either because they're fucking busy and they're, you know, like, so
Yeah,
it's, I
yeah,
think it's, you know, there's such a wide variety on that.
yeah.
Um, that it's hard, but again, just from the clinician side, you lay it out
You
and
lay
you
it out.
just let them see, you know, again, I don't treat them any different when I'm testing them out. Like
Right,
I still
right.
do all the same tests for them.
Yeah,
We're getting into force plate testing a little bit, so I can see differences side to side, which is again, information, not be all end all, but it's cool to see like, you know, oh, you have a 30% deficit on this side. You know,
yeah,
we allow like
yeah,
10% to 30%. That's, you know,
right.
like we're, you know, and what you'll see on that stuff is like, it might not be that knee, but maybe they develop Achilles tendonitis on the other side because now they're pushing off and landing on that side more because they're not using this side. And, you know, so it can lead to a cascade of other things. Or guess what? They might be fine. So
Yep.
I don't know. But
Yep.
You try to give them the best scenario to stay as active as possible with as minimal risk as possible when you work from a weekend warrior side.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you know, from a like organized team side, you know, it's also hard in high school and college athletics because when they're in season, they're not scrimmaging hard,
Right.
right? Like they might scrimmage some, but like I want this person scrimmaging
Yeah.
most days all out for a month, but they don't have that option. So we got
Yeah,
to,
it's the last half hour practice sometimes.
right? And then if I
Yeah.
want to build up, but now they had this snow day and they had 3 games this week as opposed to 2. And so they're taking
Yeah.
another day off. And from a rehab side, that's like, like we want this like
Yeah, I
continuous
think it's
exposure.
probably important for junior high and high school parents to understand that if their child's not put in that position often enough, that might extend the timeline that
Yeah.
everyone has in their
The
head.
discipline behind it is hard.
The discipline's so
I think the
hard.
best thing we can do from clinicians is provide as much clarity as possible. Like if we're not directly communicating with their coaches, maybe we're writing a note
Yeah.
and sending it with what I'm hoping they could do and
Yeah.
expectations.
It's
Parents
a
and
human nature thing. Like
yeah,
I had to deal in cardiac rehab. Somebody came in and they were a runner, but they had a freak cardiac event or bypass. They had, and they just wanted to come in and start running on a treadmill. I'm like, just do me a favor for the next 2 weeks. Just walk on a steep climb brisk. Let me watch your heart rate. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
But it's just human. It's an ego thing. Like you see it with me when I come up and I'm like, I just want to do this. Just want
yeah,
to go.
yeah. But
So
that's where training, if you can, again, like something, Buddy said this weekend is like, if you want to be a professional athlete, you have to fucking train you have to treat your body like a professional athlete.
yeah,
If you want to be able to play ball, you have to treat your body in a way that will allow it to play ball.
yeah,
So the more like how you train, like the more robust you are and the more exposure you give yourself.
yeah,
And, the more nothing is sport specific but sport. So
yeah,
but if you can do rotational stuff and you can do jumpy stuff and you can do plyometric things and you can cut and you can box jump and jump off a box, and
yep.
does that take your risk away? We don't know,
We don't
but
know.
it certainly
Yeah.
maybe gives you a little preparation,
Yeah, it kind
for
of,
it.
yeah, I mean, we always hit on it once. I think I need to probably work with you on some programming stuff because especially as you get aged, and your activities of high intensity, playing ball for the first time 2 hours, those happen more. The things that happen more often in your life. So it's like,
Right.
I'll do something 3 times a year that I historically would have done but I don't do as much as anymore. But so those little instances pop up more where it's a unique activity. I played ball for the first time in 2 years, and now I'm going to go. Somebody asked me to do a charity race, a 5 mile race, and I only run 2 to 3. So those little flare ups for people in the Gen Pop programming comes really important that you're
Really
at least
important.
that you're exposing your stuff.
And the push and pull, like if you're going to do that, then you got to take away somewhere, right? Like we've done the acute chronic workload stuff, and like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's the more consistent you are, the better. But if you do have something happen that takes your activity way high, you have to
the
respect
next
that.
week, right? And that's after I played ball, there was 2, 3 days I did just like a lot of
And some
walking.
people will train off of you. I know you don't have anything, but some people will train off of HRV. And so if you
Mm,
were to monitor your HRV after that day, it was probably way lower than you anticipated. And
mm,
that's your metric of recovery.
mm,
So if you look at the next day and your HRV comes up a little bit, but it's still not up, you're probably 70, 80, I'm going to guess. But if it's not back up there, then and it's still like 20, 30. Like after I did like some sprint
yeah,
work this past weekend, like my HRV the next morning was like 17. I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
whoa. Like it's usually
right,
like 60, right? And
yeah,
I felt like that. And
yeah,
it doesn't mean I couldn't push through and do something, but the recovery wasn't there. So why would
right,
I,
yep,
you don't necessarily push those days from an injury perspective side.
yeah. So I think as this pod, we try and touch on all the populations. We've been very focused on the reps and the scrimmaging for the athletes, which is super beneficial to parents and or athletes. But for the rest of us in the Gen Pop, like just having that robust programming, specifically the ACL, but in general,
Yeah.
um, like your programming needs to expose you to at least a fraction of that stuff so that when you do it, you are best prepared, even though there's not a best prepared, prevention protocol, but you are at least mentally, you're physically, your body can
You think
take
you're as robust as possible?
and
Is
then
that giving you the best chance of saying,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, but can
right.
we put a pin on it and say, this is what did it? Like, no.
No.
Or if you get hurt, do we blame that totally? No.
And
Like,
then still understand that after you do the activity, the rest and recovery and respecting that you took it up a notch should reflect the next 2 to 7 days of toning it down a little bit, but
totally,
still, yeah.
totally.
Okay. So, all right. So we did timeline stuff, we did quad stuff, we did return to run, we did return to sport. I think you had one more on that list.
I had just the physician and PT
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
I think it really is really lacking, and I don't think it's necessarily this area only by any means. But I mean, I literally, as much passion as I hope you all can feel I put into what I do, really gave a full report to somebody, and it was somebody who didn't have a great quad coming in, and wants to be back to like some high level CrossFit stuff, and we're working through quad strength, and we're working through all that stuff, and again, like, I knew it was a day that clearance would come out of their mouth, and so I wrote beautiful note about, like, this is what we're doing. This is
Yeah.
where the quad is. This is what I'm seeing. This is what the force plate testing is saying, and I kind of, poured my heart onto a note, which I don't always do. And
Mm.
pretty much the doctor just took the note and was like, oh, this stuff doesn't really matter. Like, fuck off. And you are one of the top surgeons in this area. I would never fucking go to you, ever. And I'm not saying that, but so there's two sides of this, because if most PT is shitty, then why would he care about a note? But if you're James Andrews and you don't know that Kevin Wilk is your guy, and you don't know your PTs and what they're doing with your top, like, that doesn't happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying, like, I don't care if you're a clinician or a physician and you have a little chip on your shoulder. I don't care about that. I deal good with egos. It doesn't matter to me.
Right.
But the fact that you fucking said it doesn't matter, are you insane? Like, you're also told, like, somebody with with a high hamstring tear that you repaired, that they'll be back in 4 months, and they are 5 months out and still can't even engage their hamstring because it hasn't been attached for 5 years. Like, do you not remember,
Right.
like,
Right.
anything? And quite frankly, I don't get it. But if they don't expose themselves to it, and it just, like, the level of care of physicians to what their people are doing in PT is frightening to me. And
Mhm.
then, like, PTs, I think on the other end too, like, we shouldn't step our boundaries. Like, if you're,
Right.
if somebody's dead set on having a surgery, I'm not going to talk them into conservative care. Like, go ahead, like, go, like, okay, I'm here, I'll help you through. But, like, the notion that, the two professions don't work together, or the notion that, physicians that are doing surgeries on top athletes in the area don't even know who their PTs are, or
Yeah.
maybe their PTs are their buddies, but they provide shit care, is just fascinating. It's just like, if you did all this beautiful work on somebody and it's beautiful, pat yourself on the back, the picture looks great, and then it can be fucked up if you can't single leg squat. Like, what are we doing? So I think, and I don't think that's unique to my area. I think that's a problem all over. But I do think when you see the people who, are doing really well, they have a team that puts their egos aside and their work aside and really builds off each other for the fucking patient.
Right.
For
Right.
them.
Yeah. I'm
Not for
totally.
me to say,
Oh,
oh, look at that rehab, like,
yeah.
for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
I'm
ah,
definitely monetizing this episode of you. So this yeah, so again, like, this is all as a patient, as a civilian, as me, as the guy on the podcast that's supposed to represent all of us that are trying to put together a program for ourselves and get back to health. This is a dynamic. It's like, like a boss at work. Like, I don't care, just solve the fucking problem. So it's
yeah,
like, but we do have to be, as consumers, as patients, we got to be aware that there's this weird dynamic of egos in the healthcare system on how you guys are collaborating, um, and the information that is coming out of two different constituencies' mouths, and then downloading maybe conflicting information on us. Knowing that, so you're making a PSA, surgeons, doctors, PTs, and personal trainers need to work better together. Great. Well, they're not right now. So how do I internalize this as a patient, knowing that, maybe the surgeon is good, maybe he is working good with the PT? Like, is there anything that, aside from the hard timelines, which we've beat to death, is there things, as patients are getting maybe conflicting information from a good PT, a bad PT, a good surgeon, a bad surgeon, good on each, or good and bad, and one's wrong and the other right, like, how
Yeah.
do I discern this in an area where I'm not the expertise, I'm the consumer,
Right. I mean, as you can imagine, for me to keep my mouth shut is hard, but I do it to the clients, right? Like my practice is I don't want them to feel like a piece of shit,
Correct. That's what I'm
somebody
yeah
else
that's
said,
what I'm saying.
right?
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's putting, how I talk on here is not how I talk to people.
Right.
Unless there's a very deep relationship with them and they know me and they already know what I'm going to say, like, on that,
Yeah.
then I'll let loose a little bit. But I do think as a clinician, you have to be careful of, not stepping on authority toes, but like,
Yeah.
you don't want the client to be in this area of dismay,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So from a picking a physician side, I mean, in my area, it's hard because there are some that I communicate well with, that almost always I initiate that communication, and I just take it upon me to initiate that.
Mm-hmm.
From a client side, I would be, asking physicians, if I'm having an ACL surgery, like, what's the rehab process like? What should I expect? And if they don't know or can't answer that, it doesn't mean maybe you don't use them as your surgeon, but you've got to do much more legwork
Yeah.
behind, right?
I don't like put people in boxes. I like to position myself on this pod as the jack of all trades. I know a little bit about everything, but I don't know a ton about a lot. So,
Yeah.
it's like, but a surgeon is a surgeon,
Yeah.
so it's like,
And a
um,
PT is a PT,
and a
right? Like,
PT is
so,
a PT. Yeah.
right. So I
So,
think it's, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
well, it's so, like, if I'm the patient, and I'm hearing conflicting information, and nobody's bad mouthing, I'm just hearing two different kind of stories coming from a PT and a surgeon. Um, I think this podcast already should be like a template, and again, we chapter everything out, so we went down some rabbit holes. People can go to like the key takeaways,
Yeah.
and be like, all right, I need to consider all of this and have it in my head, especially as an ACL patient, or really any surgical patient, um, for me to best put the pressure on, in a good, respectful way, of curiosity and questions to ask both people. Have you considered everything? Blah, and have you considered the comprehensive downstream effects of this, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. I think that's where, in this free market utopian world that I love to live in,
Yeah.
where my sun's shining and there's no clouds, is people are curious, and pushing on the experts to just explain it to me. And I do that to you all the time.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but yeah, but what about this? What about this? And you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
and now, because you know me, you're like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Right.
But do that because you don't know what you're talking about, and you just want to stress test this stuff. So I think the red flags a lot of times are if the doctor or the PT is getting impatient with you, and they're like,
Totally not
just,
listening to you. And yeah, I mean, I think from like picking a physician, and, it is a little hard for me to recommend physicians to people right where I am. Because number one, customer service is tough in bigger, like, orthopedic practices. Sometimes, not always. Some customer service is good. Like, some people have good experience, some people have bad experiences.
mhm.
I think, total opinion, right? I think, just the dialogue people are told sometimes, and it's not just from physicians, but I'm using that as an example, and I know I'm being hard on them. I think is hard to, the dialogue is hard to push against, right? So if you're like, you have to get this surgery, or else you're going to have very bad osteoarthritis when you get older. And although that's not true, like a physician is a position of authority,
Mm-hmm.
right? And most people don't like to challenge authority.
Mm-hmm.
And those that challenge authority often don't do it in front of their face. They'll go back and do their own research, and then that doctor will never see them again because they chose to leave them, and they don't care because their numbers are high and their profit margins are high and they make a
Right.
shit ton of money, right? So, I think, it's hard. It's hard. But now I do have some physicians that, again, like if I called, they would answer, that if I
Yeah.
have a question, they'll respond,
Yeah.
that know that I will send them a personal update,
Yeah.
not just my note, but I will shoot them a text and say, hey, I saw Pete, he's doing great. This is what we're doing. This is what I'd like to do. This is what I see.
Yeah.
And they will back that. I do think there's others in the area like that, of course, but I do think I have a unique relationship with a lot of them that I've tried to build over the years, where at minimum, if somebody says they're in PT, as far as PT or with Allison, that they're like, oh, good.
Good.
I'm
Yeah.
glad
Yeah.
you're there. They're awesome.
Yep.
But they're not necessarily like forthcoming. Like, a lot of physicians don't recommend us because we don't take insurance. And they point blank are like, well, these guys are great, but they don't take insurance. Like, it's not your choice. Like, it's the patient's choice.
Right.
So just shut up. We'll handle that,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it's tough. I think, I think if people were to dig on the relationships that the physicians in our area and many areas have with their PTs, it's a little poo-pooed. And obviously I'm a PT, so I take that to heart.
Yeah.
But I want, I strive for, and I want good relationships with the physicians. We would die if they would come to our office and
Yeah.
hang with us and see what we're doing and
Yeah.
learn, about the rehab side.
I guess I always answer when we hit this point in the podcast, which we've hit this topic a few times. I always answer my own question, but it's like, as for us, the consumers, it's just like, dude, you got to ask harder questions. You have to be confident that even though you don't know anything, that if you're being dismissed, that should be a red flag, and you should go down of doing your own research, find a second opinion, or talking with the other party and trying to say, well, my surgeon did tell me this. How do you feel about that? If we as consumers can do that, we get the best information from doctors and clinicians.
Right.
That way, it's very much like the North Star Bison podcast we had with Mary Gracie. Like, they put an affidavit up on their website. They're not organic. They say they're better than organic. You can trust them or not, but they're there to
Right.
answer your questions, so you
Right.
can do the research. I think it's very much the same. Like, it would be great if all the PTs and physicians and everyone in a position of authority and expertise had the ability to collaborate, check ego and stuff like that. But they do have wisdom and experience where they've helped people too.
Of
So
course.
I think it's just, I'm answering my own question. This is why we're doing this podcast. This specific episode is, consider these things as a consumer, as a
Correct.
parent, as somebody returning activity. So yeah, that
Correct.
dynamic between you and all your peers is it's the kind of like the saddest part I always hear. It's in this.
Sad. It's sad. And I'm not saying, like, because everybody's busy. Look, I don't want to get on the phone 5 minutes, 15 times a day for my clients. Like, I
No.
don't. Like, if I needed to, would I? Yes, but I don't. Like,
Yeah.
finding 10 minutes sometimes in a day for me is hard.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think we need to, like, have this relationship where we discuss everything. But
Correct.
like, if I call you or you call me, like, something's up. Like, I'm not here to just say, hey, what's up? How you doing? What are
Yeah.
you doing this? Like, I'm not here for that. I'm here to say, look, this happened. We need help. Like, I'm calling you because this person I'm referring to probably needs surgery. I'm handing you a ground ball. I've done
Mhm.
all the things. But
Right.
then, like, we'll refer somebody and be like, well, take a rest for 4 weeks and then go to PT for 4 weeks. We did that. We're trying to tell you we did that. And we
Yeah.
did that to the highest level that we know.
Yeah.
Like, please give them an X-ray or an MRI now. Like, please, like
Yeah.
we've done the things and so it's hard. It's a
It's very
hard
hard.
world to
I
live
mean, we
in. Yeah.
talked about this one. This is the one that touches on all the other guests we've had. Like Yarn Brook talked about on the politics and news. Like, who do you trust? It's
Yeah.
like
Hard.
how do you figure it out? It's really hard. You have to do the work because
Right.
we've outsourced so much and we've given so much opinions and unearned authority to people who have. And Buddy Morris, the Cardinal strength and conditioning coach, talked about this. Fred posted on his social. He's like, I don't have any initials after my title. He goes,
Right.
I'm Buddy Morris. I don't have MD. I don't have this certification. I don't have that. I have
Right.
a ton of wisdom. You can look at the guys and girls that I work with in the sport, and then those results speak for themselves versus everyone else who has these fucking degrees.
Right.
Um,
Doesn't
so
make them think. His point to that is it doesn't, those degrees don't make you great because they don't necessarily make you think. They're a weekend course,
yeah,
and I have them. I've had them. I've
yeah,
got rid of some of them because I'm not
yeah,
paying the money to keep them.
yeah,
Like, and I don't think that makes you stand out. Like I think it should
yeah.
say that you have a level of knowledge, but it
World
doesn't mean that you're
world's
great.
changing too fast. Hey
Right?
man, I got an MBA from a top 30 business school.
Yeah.
Don't mean shit today, man.
Yeah.
People can learn
Yeah.
to code and write scripts and analytics and take these YouTube courses in 6 hours and almost learn everything I learned in 2 years
Yeah.
of business
Right.
school. It's
Right.
crazy like how fast you get
Great.
at it. So you have to be like study, adopt.
Yeah.
So
A
the
consumer, you have to make your own decision. And I do think, and as hard as I have been in this on physicians and all that, like, that isn't how I portray things to people because
yeah,
I don't want somebody battling inside. I want them to make a decision for themselves. But
yeah,
like the return to sport at 6 months, like,
yeah,
hey, here's my experience. Here's the data. Here's what we're working towards. Here's like, you're working with me. What do you see? What do you feel?
yeah,
And a lot of them will make their own choice. I'm not ready when
yeah,
I say 6 months. Okay, great. Like
yeah,
I hear you. Like this is why like we put this kind
yeah,
of in place. So I don't want to say like, and I rarely will, I mean, I will disagree with physicians,
yeah,
but how I put that out to people
yeah,
is and what I would hope is a noble way where I'm not putting them down. I'm just giving them a different perspective.
yeah,
And I don't think that holds true for all healthcare professionals, right? Like we'll have people that leave us and like we've built them up so high for something, and then they go somewhere and they're like, oh, well, they like I had somebody the other day that came back from another appointment because he was traveling, and he's like, wow, that was the most negative hour of my life. But this was over here, that's over there, and I'm like, and like he's like, how you feeling about it? He's like, well, I don't fucking care because I know I'm fine. I was like, thank
yeah,
God, because somebody
yeah,
else who's looking for a quick fix and what's wrong with me would just be destroyed after this last session. And I
yeah,
make it my priority to not make people feel shittier about themselves. I
yep,
might tell them hard messages
yeah,
and I might give them a lot to ponder upon, but I don't want them feeling
yep,
like they're in shitty hands. I don't want them to feel like a surgery was wrong. I don't, even if I go in the back door and I'm like, what the fuck did they do this for?
yep.
I don't want them
And that,
like feeling bad about their choice because what good is that, right? So
yeah,
again, like how people put it, and even though there's could be a fight between people, like to the consumer,
yeah,
like again, it's your consumer's choice.
yep,
So you
yep,
have to listen and make what makes you feel best, and what have you researched yourself? Tell me what you found yourself,
yep.
because I'll help
Yeah,
you
you've
sift
said
through
that.
that. Or
You said that with
yeah,
Tanner. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So what it is, yeah. And but again, it built on developing yourself. So I think you, Craig Liebenstein, Katie Dabrowski, Fred Duncan, all these Ryan Chow,
yeah,
all these people in your circle are like trying to beat the drum to make your peers better, and hopefully consumers see that like, oh my god, every time I deal with a person like this, I'm getting way more information and being set, the table's being set way more comprehensively for me. When I go in, I feel good. I should
yeah,
seek out, as a consumer, I should seek out people like that or ask questions to pry. It's like I'm putting it on consumers. Like we have to do it right now in this state where
yeah,
healthcare is and how groups are working together. It's not despair, but because it is time to find the right clinicians. Like we don't have that time all the time either ourselves. So really just it doesn't even mean doing your own research, but it is putting the pressure on and trying to pry the most amount of information and not feel bad and have a little empathy for the clinician as a consumer when you're pushing them. Know that even though it might come off as you're challenging them, if they snap back at you, you have to kind of, us as consumers got to brunt that right now in this current state until we get to a better place.
Yep.
But groups like yours, and again, bias or my sister, but I've been around it and I've seen the results. Hopefully like that word kind of spreads through and that it becomes like the new norm. But right now, right now it's murky and it is hit or miss, and which includes hits, which are good, but
Yeah.
it can be hit or miss.
Yeah,
So
and like even in a practice like ours, like, I mean, I would, my bias is that everybody's getting better, but there are people that we're still referring out that are
yeah,
still struggling. But
yep,
to me, it's the narrative of like, how are you feeling with what you're doing?
yeah,
Because we all struggle through
yeah, yeah,
something,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you struggle through something and just knowing people are there, like we've had people that, have gone out of our walls that needed more like psychological stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then they come back in and they cry when they walk in our doors, and we didn't even do anything with them yet. We
Yeah,
just helped them
right.
find their path. I mean, I could cry right now, but
Yeah,
like I just help them find their path
yeah,
to better themselves. And if it's with us, cool. If it's not, bye. And if it's, or
yep.
see you later. And like, like it's just, I think, yeah, how people feel, how you feel as a consumer,
Mm-hmm.
like with what's happening. Like how many times do you go somewhere and you leave and like, man, I just didn't like how that felt. Like those 5 minutes didn't feel good. Like I was expecting more. I was expecting this, and you're like,
Yep.
like, man, like I think that's missed a lot. And, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
I
Well,
digress.
this was an extensive one.
Yeah. So
A lot
cool.
of digest. Again, we break everything out in chapters in here. So like, I'll label them easily on YouTube and where we release this. So like, if there's something specific to recovery from ACL, and it really does apply to a lot of other things that aren't ACL related, by the way. It's just like the concepts are there. Um, Refer to the chapters, take in the message, become a better consumer. Everyone's trying their best, even the quote unquote bad ones. So, a little empathy on all sides, and just head down, grind it out, man. Like life is good. Um, I'm sure we'll touch later on episodes. I mean, we touched on through this, but you had a nice little session this past weekend in Arizona with Buddy Morris, the strength and conditioning coach of the Arizona Cardinals, put on by Fred Duncan, our most listened to, viewed podcast. Fred Duncan, the legend. I'm sure there's a bunch of takeaways. I already saw you implementing and teaching your Suarez PT
Oh yeah.
client colleagues, doing some stuff.
And much more to learn.
Yeah, much more to learn. So it'd be interesting to follow up on some of that stuff in future episodes. We'll try and get some guests on here. But yeah, really appreciate this information. This is good for consumers to get a peek behind the door of the struggles that you guys are dealing with and how that might affect the words that we hear from our clinicians. So it's important to understand that as context so that we don't get discouraged when we hear something good, bad, indifferent from our doctors and people that are taking care of us.
Amen.
Okay.
Got it.
You can like and subscribe down below. We appreciate that always. Go 49ers. The country's in our corner. The Chiefs are the new villains. They're the new Tom Brady. They're the new New England Patriots. Nobody wants them to win. So go Brock Purdy. Go Christian McCaffrey. Go George Kittle. Go Deebo Samuel.
Go whatever I bet on.
Go Coach Shanahan. I hope everyone hits their squares, eats a lot of food. And when I release this next week, it's post Super Bowl. Hopefully we're all celebrating together. And we're celebrating a Niners win. And we're celebrating while we're all taking in this beautiful information of how to best deal with the healthcare system as constructed today. So PODY is built on developing yourself. And we will see you on the next episode, everyone. See ya.